Sal, will you tell the story about how you experienced that miraculous and specific answer to prayer?
Oh, I'm happy to. I'm honored to declare what God has done in my life. Um, it all began really just as the history. I had always had just severe doubts, even after I became a Christian at age 15. So the passage about doubting Thomas really applies to me, and I actually totally get it. It's not that we're doubting because we don't want to believe. It's because we want to believe. We want constant reassurance. And I think actually I've tried to tell people, if you're a doubting Thomas, that's not all bad, because you want a lot of reassurance. What is wrong with coming before God and asking him to reassure you that he's there? I think that's a beautiful and noble thing. And sometimes God will kind of not give you as much as you want right when you're demanding it. He may let you be dragged through the mud a little bit just to kind of test how badly you want it. And that was the case for me. And so, I got saved at age 15, but then as I went to college and studied science, I'm just like, well, we have experiments, we have proof, and all the methods of science. And I said, it just doesn't seem when I go to Sunday morning that it's the same thing. It always felt like faith by assertion. And I said, can't you give me one experiment? Can't you give me one proof? I mean, you're making all these assertions, and this is a big deal, how we're going to live our life. And so I was really just despairing. It came to a head in two things. One, my dad was diagnosed as terminally ill, and I prayed, and I said, God, can you heal him? And he just kept getting sicker and sicker. He eventually passed away in 2003, and I was in a crisis of faith. The other thing was, I had an acquaintance, and we were praying. I was part of a prayer group praying for people at McLean Bible Church. And one of the people we were praying for was Heather Mercer. You can Google her name. She was, yes, she was, and so she was part of my church. And there she was in Afghanistan. The Taliban had arrested her, basically kidnapped her and imprisoned her. A death sentence was probably pending. It's not well known that what precipitated this is she prayed for a little baby that was slowly going blind, and the baby got healed the next day, and the parents were proclaiming Jesus in this prayer, and they arrested her for that. I only found that out many years later, by the way. But at the time, I did not know that story. And I said, what's the point? I said, okay, it's all right if I believe and it affects my own life. But if I start associating myself with the Christian church and proclaiming it, and also encouraging missionaries to give up their life, I said, I better be sure that what I am promoting is the real thing. I could not live with myself unless I knew for sure, or at least I knew for sure that there was a good chance we were right. I didn't need 100% proof, but I needed a lot. I said it would be unconscionable to encourage someone to live for a lie, and worse, to give their life up for a lie. And I was thinking, maybe they should just go back home and not be missionaries and just try to live out their life as pain-free as possible. And so under that level of scrutiny, I began to ask these questions, and I nearly just lost my faith. I had bouts of agnosticism, and I was just wandering around. But then I said, I don't really even believe the Bible very much anymore. I mean, I'd like to believe. And then I said, okay, why don't I just start with what little I know? And I said, okay, I have at the time I had 3 science degrees. I said, I'll start from there. And then I learned about intelligent design. I learned about the miracle of life. At the time, I didn't resolve the problem of evil. I said, God, it does seem that this world is created by an intelligence that's unimaginable. But I can't reconcile that with all the problem of evil. But I said, okay, I'll postpone it. I'll postpone that question, but at least I have hope there is a God. And so my faith started to heal, and I started to believe. There's one aspect to this that I need to share. I went to my prayer group and I said, I think I'm losing my faith. I'm out of gas. I'm out of fuel. I don't have any more energy to just force myself to believe. Can you pray for me? Because it says in James 5:16, confess your faults before one another so that you may be healed. And it also says in James that if you can't, if you're doubting, don't expect you're going to get anything from God. And I'm just like, well, I'm kind of like, so what's the point of me praying to God to heal my doubts if he may not even hear that? But God gives the cure. You go to godly people, because the effectual fervent prayers of a righteous man availeth much. My prayer group, in obedience to Jude, the book of Jude, that says you have mercy on those who doubt. They did that. They said, Sal, we love you. We're praying for you. Be with us. And they prayed. They prayed my faith would be healed, that God would bring what I needed to heal my faith. And it was in the form of intelligent design that was my first step. It became clear to me that the author of life made it clear that the only way life came about was through a miracle, and there's some details as far as the chronology of how all this happened, but I knew there had to be a miracle. Dead things just don't, non-living things just don't spontaneously become alive. And so I was thrilled. I was thrilled with my new discovery. I began proclaiming the news. I began being in debate forums, and I didn't know anything. I was an engineer. I was a professional engineer in the aerospace and defense industry, and I was arguing biology with professional biologists, and I was having a lot of fun. And finally I said, God, I need to offer thanks for what you've done in my life. That's the right thing to do. And so I formed a group after I completed one of my degrees. I was a continuing student at George Mason University, where I had 3 science degrees at the time. And I formed a little group. And it was just me and one other student from my church. And we were filing the paperwork to apply for this group, an intelligent design group. And I said, Christy, before we do this, I think we should pray for our group. As we were praying, I think the thought came into my mind. I don't even remember if I articulated this. I said, God, can you give us attention in national news for our little work here? And there are just 2 of us. And I mean, that seemed like that was a lot to ask, but it was impressed upon me. Well, 3 months later, I get an email from Casey Luskin, and he said, Sal, a reporter from Nature wants to talk to you. A reporter from Nature wants to talk to you. The #1 scientific journal in the world.
Wow.
And that led to so many things. He talked to me, excuse me. He was Jeff Brumfield, wonderful guy. And he interviewed me, and I gave my testimony. And April 28th, the April 28th edition of the prestigious scientific journal Nature, April 28th, 2005, I was in the cover story. I was in the cover story giving my Christian testimony. Now this,
incredible.
Well, the connection of all this was also in the story was Dr. Carolyn Crocker at George Mason University. She was a professor of biology. She had been censured, removed from teaching a class in biology because she mentioned in passing intelligent design and the problems with evolutionary theory in her cell biology class. My understanding is a student that was flunking there had a vendetta and tried to cause trouble for her. So both our stories were reported in that Nature article. 3 weeks later, she calls me up. She said, "Sal, I've been fired from the university." And it didn't surprise me. That only steeled my resolve. I said, this has to stop. This has to stop because the truth, for the sake of truth, this discussion has to move forward. Whatever one's viewpoints are, you're not, the universities, academia, et cetera, are suppressing the other side. And they're doing it in the harshest possible ways. But what ended up happening to me, I end up on the cover of Nature. People around the world, including Richard Dawkins and Jerry Coyne, and I think even probably Nobel laureate Steven Weinberg, signed a letter in protest. They were angry. They were livid. And so
that the article got into Nature, is that what they were?
Yes, a Christian testimony got into Nature, and we were confessing Jesus Christ and what Christ had done for us. Probably not in the most overt words, but I think it must have been galling that in that article it was talking about students who were engineering, science, pre-medical, that were in this intelligent design club. And I think it was galling to see that Christians could actually be outstanding students in science, and intelligent design was fueling this. And so they were mad. And then there was around 2005, just a round of expulsions throughout academia. Robert Marks at Baylor, Guillermo Gonzalez, somewhere out there, I think in Iowa, probably Iowa or Idaho. I think it was Iowa. Richard Sternberg at the Smithsonian, Bill Dembski at Baylor. And they're just, it was a round of just, and then Carolyn Crocker at George Mason. And then there was a motion picture documentary about what happened at George Mason. Motion picture documentary aired around the world. I was then, in 2006, I was in the Coral Ridge Hour. Millions of people watched it on national TV on a Sunday morning. CBS News did come by and record, but it was never aired. But our idea group did get on National Public Radio because of all that was happening there.
It's Tuesday evening at George Mason University in Northern Virginia, and about 24 students wander from dinner to the Student Union building. These students are part of a very small counter-movement on some 30 universities around the country.
Welcome to IDEA, which stands for Intelligent Design and Evolution Awareness.
They settle in for the lecture, some with Bibles placed next to their notebooks. Tonight's guest is Dr. Caroline Crocker, who used to teach cellular biology here. Now she's returned as something of a cause célèbre.
And
wow.
As I reflect now, it's like, that was just such an innocent prayer. Now I know why God put it on my heart to ask. And I think God puts it on your heart to ask certain things because he's eager to show you what he can do. He had already arranged all this before the foundation of the world. But I think sometimes he communicates to us what we should ask so we could see that he's at work in the world. I'm pleased to say that young girl that I was worried about in Afghanistan later on was rescued. The Army Special Forces or Rangers rescued her miraculously. We thought she would be killed for sure. Miraculous rescue. She went on to tell her story, and that's when I found out she had prayed for a blind girl, a girl that was going blind or had some sort of very bad infection, and the girl got healed. Then I knew more of the story. So that in sum is my testimony about a miraculous answered prayer. Thank you.
Wow. Well, will you show us the magazine?
Yes. But this This is it right here. Nature,
Wow.
the International Weekly Journal of Science. And it says here, okay, they meant this as a sarcastic joke. It says, this journal contains material on evolution. Evolution by natural selection is a theory, not a fact. This material should be approached with an open mind, studied carefully and critically considered. And is intelligent design coming to your campus?
Wow. Do you want to read a little bit of the article?
Certainly, and I'll read it here. Any of the interested viewers can just look this up. It's called Who Has Designs on Your Students' Minds? And it says, for a cold Tuesday night in March, the turnout is surprisingly good. 20 or so fresh-faced college students are gathered together in a room in the Student Union at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, the state's largest public university. They are there for the first meeting of Salvador Cordova's Intelligent Design and Evolution Awareness Club. And let me read something very interesting. We did a poll at James Madison University, and the atheists carried it out. And we asked the students, we polled like 800 students or so. I don't remember. It was a lot. We asked, would you like intelligent design taught in your university? And creation science. So between those who wanted intelligent design, creation science, or both, 75% wanted it in the university. And my goal was, universities, you'll be packed out, your religion departments. For a school of, say, 20,000, if you get 75%, that's 15,000 students that would want to take the class. Even if the poll was actually wrong by a factor of 10, that's still 750, that's still 1,500. You're going to pack out your religion department. I was wanting to say, I asked them, would you like to take this as like a general elective to satisfy? Because you could take the other boring stuff, or you could take it in a religion class. They wanted it. And, I kind of was naive. I didn't realize necessarily, the goals of academia don't necessarily align with what, the students really feel they want or need. And so that poll was reported in the prestigious scientific journal Nature. That was important. There's a hunger out there, and I've been driven to satisfy that hunger ever since, whatever I could do. And you'll see the thing that was disheartening is there are Christians that hate intelligent design. I'm going to read that, and then I'll read stuff about me. Perhaps surprisingly, many theologians are equally upset by intelligent design. The basic problem that I have theologically is that God's activities in the world should be hidden, says George Murphy, a Lutheran theologian, PhD physicist, and author of The Cosmos in the Light of the Cross. Murphy says that Lutherans believe that God's primary revelation came through Jesus Christ, and many find it distasteful that additional divine fingerprints should appear in nature. Catholics, for their part, have accepted evolution based on the idea that God could still infuse the natural human form with the soul at some point in the distant past. And even the evangelical Christians who make up the backbone of the intelligent design's political supporters sometimes object to its inability to prove whether Christianity is the true religion. And yet, students listening to Cordova's lecture seem intrigued. Everyone in the room is a Christian, and half are working toward degrees in science, medicine, or engineering. It seems perfectly natural to them to mix science and faith. Many of them are also frustrated by the exclusively secular tone of their science classes, and to these students, intelligent design offers an appealing alternative that puts God squarely back in the center of things. Many of these students at the school, not just at that lecture, were Carolyn Crocker's students. When they found out she'd been fired and the reasons why, they were livid. And many of them said, we believe that God created this. They were her biology students. They rejected evolution. It was satisfying that there were people in our group that were going on to get master's degrees or in biology. And this is, if the truth were actually able to be debated publicly, this isn't going to stop. In fact, I've met so many people that were either agnostics or atheists, and they said when they studied cell biology at the high level, I mean, like, say, close to graduate level, senior level, they became Christians because they realized everything they're being told in their classes, that evolution is natural. They're just like, no, there's just no way. Many have become Christians. So that's a little bit about the article. So this was so heartening, to see, that prayer, that simple prayer was answered in a way I never imagined. It not only got national attention, it got international attention. And, despite calls for the movement, claims that the movement is dying, it's alive and well. Praise God.
Wow, that is an awesome testimony. Thank you so much, Sal.
Thank you.
His own self for heavenly food.